The religious are clearly threatened by the existence of people who don't believe what they believe. Now, why is that? Because the things that these people believe, they clearly make no sense at all. And this is why they're terrified to actually engage in a serious dialogue with the non-religious. They'll talk about us a lot, they just won't talk to us. And why is that? Because we can kick their asses with both legs tied behind our backs. Now that sounds uncomfortable, but not nearly as uncomfortable as the theists who are just terrified that we exist at all. So, let's go take a look. Today, we get a video from a church fellowship conference where a pastor, Paul Washer, spouts off about things that he has clearly never considered rationally before. Because the religious are never rational, are they? It's pure emotions, and anything intellectual, that gets completely ignored. Why would you ever care about any of the things that accurately actually represent factual reality? They're terrified of reality. They want nothing to do with reality. If it gets in the way of their fifis, they're going to run away. And how idiotic is that?
What do you think the greatest threat is to the church in our generation?
Well, I'd like to suggest one if you can't come up with one on your own. It's reality. Reality is horrifying to the religious because religion, any religion, all religion, wants nothing at all to do with the real world. They would rather live in an emotional happy land where everything is wonderful so long as they believe the right things and have the right faith. The problem is, none of that is actually demonstrably true. I mean, listen to Christians who actually believe that sometime. These are not happy people. These are miserable idiots who are desperately trying to rationalize why things are never going the way they want. God is unhappy. The devil is interfering. You name it, these people are miserable, and they can't figure out that it's their own beliefs that are actually responsible. But anyway, let's get back to the video and see what they actually have to say.
It's pastors. Honestly. The pastors. Anywhere, God has given 3 offices, I believe, to the church. Evangelist, pastor, and teacher.
And this is where he starts to go completely off the rails. This is what he believes, not what he can prove, not what he has any evidence for, and that's where religion becomes such an unmitigated mess. This is why I don't care what anyone believes. I don't care what you have faith in. I care what you can prove, and these people can't prove anything. Anyone can profess anything for any reason whatsoever, and honestly, we don't know if this guy is being honest or not. I hope he is, but you never know. We've seen an awful lot of videos where they're not being honest, and it's clear. When you work for the religion, when you make your living speaking for and to the church, your words are immediately suspect because all of a sudden, there's a profit motive involved. You have to protect your livelihood. Now, I don't know for certain what's going through this guy's head, and really, I don't know that it much matters. But you immediately have to ask yourself if he's being honest or if he's just covering his own ass. We already know for a fact that there's an awful lot of priests and ministers and pastors and, whatever, that are actually not believing. They're just doing it because they have nothing else that they can do with their skill set. That's what the Clergy Project is for, after all. There's a lot of people out there spewing a lot of bullshit because they have no other way to make money. You can make up your own mind on the subject, that's fine. I'm just not convinced at all.
Wherever you see a weak church, you see these weak men. Either they're non-existent, they're unbiblical, or they're unconverted.
or the whole system is complete and utter bullshit. And it's funny how he doesn't want to consider that option, isn't it? Now, it's possible, perhaps even probable, that a lot of pastors no longer believe that any of this bullshit is actually true, and that's perfectly fine, at least from my perspective. As I said, that's why the Clergy Project was set up, to help these people trapped in a theistic nightmare without any other job prospects to get out and get the help that they actually need to survive. So it's entirely possible that some of these people have deconverted, preaching from the pulpit because they have no other choice. And yeah, that's kind of a sad prospect. I've talked to a number of former pastors in recent weeks, and every single one of them, they all stayed at their post for a very, very long time, preaching things that they now knew were complete nonsense just because they had nowhere else to go. So let's help these poor people out and close down these stupid churches, because it's all a load of crap. And that's the best thing anyone could ever do.
And all this talk about the judgment on our country because of its immoralities and everything else, never forget, judgment always begins with the household of God. And I am astounded at the lack of the fear of the Lord and the lack of biblical knowledge among those who would call themselves the ministers of Christ.
There is no knowledge, though. Lots of people profess it, but all they have is faith, not knowledge. They have belief, not facts. It's blind faith, not anything that they can actually show. It's people who play wishful thinking games instead of actually being concerned with what is objectively defensible. Why? Because absolutely none of it is. Every single one of you has stuffed your head full of nonsense for entirely emotional reasons, and now you're just playing a game of, well, I know you are, but what am I? Everyone thinks that they've got it right, and everyone else has it all wrong. Even these jackasses on stage. Here's a suggestion for you, though. Maybe you're all wrong. Did you ever think about that? Of course not. No, they wouldn't do that because that's not emotionally comforting. And that's why they get it wrong all the time, because they're entirely terrified to think.
And the atrocities that have happened in America in evangelicalism, just in the pulpit itself, the tomfoolery, the lack of reverence. If you have a church that's not a praying church, it's because you have non-praying elders. The church is not biblical, it's because you have non-biblical elders.
Well, that's because they're not doing what you want them to do. Let's be honest. This is a bunch of idiots sitting up in front of a religious audience who are looking specifically for certain kinds of answers. That doesn't mean that the answers that they're actually looking for actually make any sense, because, they don't care about that. They just want to hear something comforting out of the mouths of men that they think have the answers that they want to hear, but they never actually ask themselves if these fucknuts have anything worthwhile to say. Again, nobody ought to care what you think. Nobody ought to care what you believe. They ought to care what kind of defensible evidence you can offer for the positions that you hold. And this is why the religious have no interest whatsoever in reality, because reality is scary. It's much easier to just make unjustified, unsupported, undignified claims and play make-believe and try to hold others accountable to your own feelings than to just trot out the best proof that you can and prove you got a clue what the fuck you're talking about. Because they don't.
It always goes back to, so when I look at the nation, I'm not blaming some party or professors or this or that. I'm looking at myself as a minister of Christ.
Then maybe, and just hear me out here, maybe you ought to change your tune. Maybe you ought to take a couple of giant-sized steps back and say, Why in the world do I believe this, and how have I verified any of it objectively to see if I'm full of shit or not? Because those aren't questions that any of these people ever concern themselves with, are they? They don't care. And it wouldn't matter what denomination or what religion you put up there on that stage. They'd all be doing the exact same thing because they all hold the same kind of stupid beliefs. The kind of absurd self-depreciation that you see in religion, it's just laughable. Well, don't blame God, blame us. We're all horrible sinners. We should all go to hell. And then they're pointing fingers at everybody else when it comes time to single out someone to blame. That's kind of odd when you think about it, isn't it? Go figure.
And that's a very solemn, that's why someone shouldn't enter into the ministry very lightly. And we could say all kinds of other things, but it all does come back to that. We could say liberalism, which is true. We could say even a greater, more dangerous thing that's a secret, hidden liberalism is when men affirm that the Bible is inerrant, but their whole ministry is nothing but pragmatism.
And who exactly said that the Bible was inerrant? Other than the Bible, but that makes the whole thing circular, and you people don't care, do you? What kind of lunatic thinking is that? Because the Bible, if you just read the things written in it in black and white, it is nothing remotely close to inerrant. This is a positional statement. It's not an objectively verifiable thing. This is more faith and no fact at all. Dude, you're sitting way the hell too close to the stupid book of religious mythology. Come back over here where the normal people are and try to evaluate it critically. Look at it for what it is, not what you wish that it was. The religious, especially the evangelicals and the fundamentalists and all those crazy people, they can't do that if you notice, because they're really not sane. They're just not. It's not even an option. They start off with that conclusion, reached for emotional reasons, and then that just has to be true because, fee-fees, even if it demonstrably isn't. Because they don't actually care if it's true. It's only there to stroke their egos and get that dopamine hit in the head. That's all they care about. Because they can't live in a world where the stupid things in their head aren't true. Even if they demonstrably aren't. When they run into things that are clearly contradictory, they have to invent explanations in their head to just explain it all away. There can't be any contradictions in the Bible. Why? Because they say so. There just can't be. Therefore, if they can just make up some ad hoc explanation for how it could have happened, not how it did happen, not how we can prove it happened, anything that they can just go, well, maybe, well, it could have been that way. Well, if that gets them out of their problems, that's how it had to happen, no matter how absurdly silly it might be. Never mind that they can't demonstrate any of it, it just gets them around an uncomfortable situation. Therefore, it's real. Yeah, not so much. The real world doesn't work that way.
All you young men need to understand something. All this talk about Reformation the last 15 years, the reformers didn't want to be reformers. They just wanted to be biblical, number one. Number two, you're not reformed simply because you've adopted an academic view of some sort of sovereign grace soteriology. You're following in the spirit of the reformers because you're trying to take every aspect of your thought, your doctrine, your disposition, your life, your family, your church, and submitting it to what is written. And so those are some of the things.
No, you're trying your hardest to get back to the emotional underpinnings of the things that make you feel good. You're looking for happiness, not truth. You're looking for comfort, not reality. This is where all of these churches go entirely sideways. Well, this has to be true because it's what we've always believed. Well, no, that's not actually how truth operates. A thing is true because it can be shown, with objective evidence and critical scrutiny, to be factually correct in the reality that we all share. If it can't, then no one, absolutely no one, no matter how emotionally attached they might be, nobody ought to believe it. And that goes for you jackasses up on the stage. The problem that we have, continually, is that people just don't care about the facts. Their fifis get in the way. They'd rather embrace their emotions, and when reality gets in the way, well, reality is the thing that gets flushed out of their heads, because their fifis are much more important. And that's stupid. That's what makes this whole thing so pathetically sad. These people are just dumb, and they're so dumb that they don't even know how dumb they are. I don't know how to describe how stupid that is, but it's pretty damn stupid. Anyway, what did you think? Did any of this make any sense to you at all? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. It would be really nice if we could get some credible theists down there too, but I'm actually having a lot of trouble finding anyone that I would actually consider credible. You know, anybody who actually cares about the evidence, who cares about the facts, who actually wants to believe as many true things and as few false things as they can, and who isn't just there to stroke their own fucking ego. That's sad, because those people don't seem to be out there. And why do you think that is? You can let me know that as well. Let's have a conversation, because it's a whole lot better than just listening to the religious play make-believe and mentally masturbate up on stage. Because, honestly, and really that's what we should be focused on here is honesty, but honestly, what else do these people have?